Hey, it's Tpok, and I'm back in Leaves. So, yeah, we left off with Matsuri talking about, the drugs and stuff. So yeah. And as I shook my head, Matsuri got up off her chair, picked up her bag, and made ready to leave. Her long, silky hair seemed to dance through the air. No matter which angle I looked at her from, all 360 degrees and then some, she was completely without flaw. Perfect. A facade so complete that no one in a million years could possibly get close to her. She peered at me from behind her glasses for a second. Finally, she said, "Well then, I appear to have overstayed my welcome. I shall take my leave now. I wish you the best of luck at work." "Have fun at school yourself," I retorted. I'd hoped my sarcasm would bring some reaction out of her, but it did not look like any was forthcoming. Instead, she was staring pointedly at the flooring under her feet, studying it, lost in thought. "Is something the matter?" I asked. "Yes," she shot back. "Something is the matter, all right." And then she turned that gaze of hers onto me again. "Do you plan on protecting Tuka then?" She took me completely by surprise. Damn it. Her words just now pierced me to the heart. What? I managed. What do you mean, protect? "Do you plan on protecting her? Do you plan on riding to her rescue if need be?" She asked again, her voice as cold as ice. I had no response. Matsuri sighed in exasperation. Then, "You do understand what I'm asking you, correct?" "I wonder," I muttered, stalling for time. "Yeah, maybe. I guess I do understand." "Then tell me," she plowed on, "yes or no?" "Yes." My reply was immediate. Yes. Yes to protecting Tuka. Yes to looking after her. That's what I wanted. Or at least so I thought. "I see," Matsuri muttered. And then she nodded as if some great mystery had cleared up for her. I knew I wasn't lying, because there'd be no hesitation or sense of guilt accompanying my answer. "I will be going now," Matsuri intoned. "Sure, see you around," I replied. "Come by any time." She nodded with a courteous "thank you." She left my apartment then, but only after giving me a deep, formal bow. I slumped down, a long sigh escaped from my lips now that she was gone. When I raised my face again, I expected the sight, the day's radiance being reflected off the whitewashed walls of the apartment. Nothing had changed in that regard. And nothing had changed inside my head this entire time, too. This doesn't make any sense. I sighed again. Sunbeams reflected from the windshields and headlights of cars speeding down the highway came blazing into my room, filling my eyes with light so intense it hurt. I went to the table and picked up Matsuri's empty cup. There were drops of condensation everywhere on the tabletop, hazy now with dust. This was all as expected. Oh, I right-clicked. But when I went to wash the cup, I discovered a color on it that shouldn't have been there at all. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but when I looked closer it was unmistakable. There was a trace imprint of a pair of lips. Matsuri's lips on the rim of the glass. Its color was red-pink, meaning that she was wearing lipstick today. But she never wore lipstick, not in all the time I'd known her. This didn't make any sense. It seemed a long time before I put the cup down again. Abrupt music stopped. Oh, chapter 2. Nice. Long ago, well, I suppose 30 years isn't a very long time, not in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, yeah, it was around 30 years ago that the phenomenon known as photochemical smog made itself known in the air above the city. Day in and day out, tall smokestacks rising from factories belched toxic fumes into the atmosphere, staining the clouds with colors of manufacture and industry. As the number of cars on the highway increased, so too did their emissions. Soon it got to the point where when conditions were right, smog would blanket the city just as auroras would blanket the North Pole, making it impossible to see in front of you. 30 years went by that way. And judging from what I saw before my eyes today, I had my doubts that anything had really changed. I was standing on a pedestrian bridge above one of the main artery highways that ran through the heart of the city. Great plumes of dust were everywhere, kicked up by this endless river of cars, big and small, that came screaming and honking past me. I looked down and made out the vague outlines of a large blue metal sign with arrows on it. I couldn't read the lettering, no thanks to all the vehicle fumes, and if I couldn't, the driver certainly couldn't either. None of these cars would be stopping here, I was sure of it. No, their destinations were all elsewhere, far away from here. Sure, our fair city would never know the touch of these drivers' hands, or the industry of their minds. All these people ever did was dirty our air with the exhaust from their car engines. Not that I cared about any of that. Man, it's already past 8, I said to myself. And sure enough, a cheery 8:08 a.m. was showing on the LCD of my wristwatch. Work had left me totally exhausted. I was so out of it that I thought for a moment before about taking a cab home. But the thought perished with the realization that any conversation I could possibly have with the cab driver would be more painful than hoofing it home. So after crossing the highway, I found myself walking through the lane lined with poplars. I stopped by at a convenience store to buy some food, and then continued on my way to Tpok's place. We had so much in common, yes. Our histories, for instance. We were orphans, then delinquents, what have you. We couldn't change our situations or ourselves for the better. All we amounted to at the moment was a pair of packmates hunkering down and licking each other's wounds. And while any objective observer would have called people like us pathetic, Tpok and I really didn't think that way. Well, it wasn't as if we were ignoring some great reality that was right in front of our noses. We knew it was there. It was more that we felt the weight of the massive rock on our shoulders, and thus had no choice but to think the way we did. And no, we weren't cursing at the world and turning our backs on all of society either. We weren't pointing fingers or railing against the injustices of our orphan childhoods, because if our respective parents had raised us as their own from the very beginning, we would not exist as we did today. So while we weren't ever going to tell people who abandoned us thank you, it is true that their heartless actions helped shape us into who and what we are now. See, I didn't particularly mind the way I turned out. Tpok probably felt much the same. However, and just bear with me here for the sake of argument, if my real parents were able to show up at my doorstep today, even if it was because they'd had a sudden change of heart, even if it was because they'd finally realized that what they'd done was evil and wanted to make amends, even if it was because they'd been searching for me ever since, even if it was because I wanted to see what kind of man I'd grown into, I'd beat them both to death without a second thought. Not because, as the son of such wayward parents, I had some lingering resentment over my abandonment, but because, as one human being to another, I could not stand their rationale for living. So I wouldn't be lashing out at my parents, I would be beating up on two pathetic human beings who didn't merit any better treatment, and doing the entire world a favor in the process. My shopping bag rustled in the wind. Once I crossed the next intersection, I'd be at Tpok's apartment. I heard the sound of a big diesel engine. I turned to where the sound was coming from and saw a green bus rumbling towards me, a few blocks away on a narrow, twisty road. Not an unexpected sight, so I shrugged and was about to move on when I did a double take. I turned back. The bus stop was a few steps away, and I was stunned. It's hard to describe the emotion that gripped me. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't surprise. It was a whole-body feeling of discomfort that had neither shape nor form. "What the hell?" I whispered. My shopping bag rustled in the wind, nearly falling from my nerveless fingers. I stood stock still. The world went on rotating without me. Because the bus stop wasn't empty, someone was out there. Someone was out there. Hello? Why are you scared? I was out there. What? I felt like I'd just seen a ghost. It was just standing there, hands thrust into the pockets of its blue-gray jeans, a saucy delinquent gleam in its eyes. And who knew that what it heard through the headphones clipped on its ears? The bus reached a stop, and the doors hissed open. The vehicle spit out a few people, shadows splashed everywhere. The apparition started boarding. And then our eyes met. Both of us froze with the surprise. I have no idea for how many seconds we just stood there. Then its lips curved into a mocking smile. That wasn't me, all right. Am I a woman? I thought I was a guy. Obviously not. Because I was standing right here. And I didn't smile with such hard-bitten sarcasm either. Then who was that? I didn't have a single clue. But this person certainly knew who I was. I was sure of it. The thought sent shivers down my spine. Are you going to get on board or not? Came a surly voice from inside the bus. "Oh, sorry, I'm getting on now," the stranger replied, and started walking in. But not before locking eyes with me again. There was a hint of a smile this time around, on either of our faces. We held each other's gaze for what seemed like a long time, until the stranger was swallowed whole by the innards of the bus. What? The doors hissed close. I watched the bus fade into the distance. I kept looking, but try as I might, I never caught another glimpse. What the hell? I muttered to no one in particular, not even myself. My spitting image? No, not at all. Now that I thought about it, our faces didn't actually resemble each other's that much. On top of that, I was taller and more heavily built. Finally, that was a girl, obviously, and I wasn't, obviously. Okay, well... that was a girl, and that's why I was confused when you were saying, like, "Oh, that's my doppelganger." Okay. Okay. More sense has been made. But it still bothered the hell out of me. Just who was she anyway? I watched the bus belch a great black cloud from its muffler. The memory of her smile chilled me to my bones. I could still feel the shock from when I'd first seen her standing at the bus stop. Why had I been filled with the unshakable conviction that I was staring at myself? This didn't make any sense. Maybe it was your sister? I don't know. That could be possible. I mean, you were an orphan that was put onto the streets at birth. Ish. So, I mean, it wouldn't be that surprising if they did so again. And with a sister? Or you were twins? I don't know. I pulled on the door to Tuka's apartment. The hinge complained, as always, specks of rust sprinkled to the ground. Could have also been your mom. Your biological mom. Actually, I don't know. I don't know how old this guy is. He's in high school. So I'd assume like 16, 17, 18. That age range. There was a different scent wafting from the place, not the usual stale cigarette smoke. It was a gentle fragrance, simple and sweet like soap or good perfume. And it got much, much stronger when the cheap wood door, so thin it might as well have been a single layer of plywood, creaked all the way open. A white lace curtain billowed and bloomed with sunlight at this movement of air. It was spotless and new, which meant Tpok had finally replaced the old one. The rest of the room was as drab as it has always been. The smell of soap was everywhere. Finally, there was Tpok herself, fast asleep in bed. So that's where this scent was coming from. I briefly wondered what kind of pleasant dreams she was having as I peered down at her. There was a towel wrapped around her waist, but otherwise she was naked as usual. That's a weird thing to be usual. And the way she was curled up right now, she reminded me of a snoozing cat. Just look at you, I muttered. Irritation soared within me. After all, I'd been hard at work all night. I thought about tweaking her nose hard or throwing a bucket of water on her or something, but those mean-spirited thoughts died quickly. She looked so peaceful. No need to do anything stupid. I jammed the food and drink I'd bought at the convenience store into the fridge. And then I made some space on the floor by kicking aside a bunch of empty cans and other assorted detritus. Finally, I flopped down on my back. I saw a ceiling, cracked and busted in a million places, stained by cigarette smoke and God knew what else. Occasionally, out the corner of my eye, I could see a clean white lace billowing about. If there was anything good and pure in this room, that was it. Everything else, including me, was stained and disordered. Everything else had no more strength. My hero, Tpok murmured in her sleep. I just turned away. At this point, I didn't particularly want to hear anything she had to say. Why was I here? What was my purpose in all of this? Up until this point in my life, it had always been to make sure I could stand alone, walk independently through my life. But now I was getting awfully tired of that old lie. Perhaps I should have felt elated or satisfied or something stupid like that. After all, hadn't I finally achieved what I wanted? Yes. Hadn't I finally won my freedom this year? No foster parents or anyone else to get in my way? Yes. Then why didn't I feel the least bit fulfilled? It was obvious. I'd known it since the very beginning. Being free of my foster parents wasn't really what I'd wanted. It wasn't anything more than a handy excuse. Oh, it's true that I wanted to become independent as soon as I could. But was that ever really the end all and be all of my existence? It was also obvious. I should have seen it coming a mile away. So why hadn't I ever stopped to think it through? No. I thought it through all right. I just never stopped. I remember Tpok once saying with a smile, "Wouldn't it be nice if God existed?" I remember agreeing with her. If God existed, he'd use us in mysterious ways. If God existed, there wouldn't be any need to ponder on a reason to exist, or on any of the billions of questions that have no answers in this world. Because we could say God created us. Because we could say God created each and every one of us for a purpose. And all we'd have to do would be to live according to God's will. And God would reward us richly the harder we strived, with all the joy and the sorrow and the heartbreak and the rapture in the universe. But you know what? God doesn't exist. You can cry out to him and he'll never answer. You can look for him and all you'll behold is an ugly mountain whose summit you want to say you can see, but you'd be deluding yourself because it's always hidden in storm clouds or shrouded in fog. There is no God. There is just solitude. and an emptiness so vast that you can't even begin to bear it. So you look around for something, anything at all, to fill it. Drugs, sex, what have you. Anything. So the truth isn't really that painful, no. It just happens to be a bitch. Wise words, wise words. I'm gonna end it here. So, yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.